Hey, Sarah.
Hi, can
Happy
you
Black History Month.
Yes, happy Black History Month. Thank you so much for joining today. Can you hear me well and see me well?
Yes, I can hear you well.
Okay, well, perfect. Yeah, let's get started. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Happy Black History Month. Welcome. My name is Sarah, and I'm the curriculum coordinator for A Taste of African Heritage and Latin American Heritage through Oldways. If you're wondering what is Oldways, we are a 501c3 nonprofit. We focus on nutrition and heritage-based curriculums. And, one of the ways that we're celebrating Black History Month is our African Heritage Recipe Challenge. So every single week, we'll be posting a recipe. This week, the recipe is the cabbage slaw. So I definitely recommend you guys to follow the links on our account and try it out. If you try it, take a picture of it because you'll be entered in for a chance to win free gifts from Oldways. So now, along with that, I would love to continue on with our conversation with our African Heritage and Health Advisory Board member, Tambra Raye Stevenson. Thank you for joining. I do have a brief introduction because this lady is absolutely amazing, and I think, I definitely want to give some insight. So, let's get started on this. So Tambra Raye Stevenson, she is the founder and CEO of Wanda nonprofit. She is a National Agricultural Research Extension Education Economics Advisory Board member. She is also a member of the DC Mayor's Office of African Affairs and Health Education Planning Committee. She serves on the Mission Committee for the American Heart Association and plays a role on the Community Leadership Board for the American Dietetics Association. And she was recently, honored an honoree of the Union of Concerned Scientists of 2021. So congratulations, Tambra, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us. Having me, and I mean us, little Wanda in the background. She's basically our elf on the shelf, but representing Black women and girls in food and nutrition. So I'm happy that everyone's joining the chat. Please put in any kind of questions that you have. We want to make this discussion as interactive as possible. Well, as you know, Black History Month, the theme is Black health and wellness. And so it's appropriate to talk about how food and nutrition and reconnecting to our heritage foods fits into our health.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'd love to talk a little bit, of course, how you got connected with us, but first I'd love to, just kind of give a little blurb about your nonprofit, Wanda. So if anyone doesn't know what Wanda stands for, it is Women Advancing Nutrition, Dietetics, and Agriculture. And not only is it an organization, but it is also a movement that empowers female food leaders out there in the field and in and of the African diaspora to advocate against the rise of non-communicable diseases. So her nonprofit is awesome, and the Wanda doll that you see on the corner there is kind of like the mascot, so super cute. And so let's get started with rolling out these questions. One of the first questions I wanted to ask you was, we're so excited to have you as one of our advisory board members. You've been with us, for so long. And I was wondering if you could tell us, what first got you connected with Oldways?
To be very transparent, which is why social media is such a great opportunity to connect and meet new people. I actually got a DM message through LinkedIn from the communication manager at the time. At the time, I was already focused around African heritage foods. And so when it was an opportunity to learn more about how I can actually actualize that by partnering with Oldways and develop out the program, since this was the first time ever they had a program attached to one of their heritage pyramids, I jumped at the opportunity. I had already had met with Muslim sisters here in DC at Masjid Muhammad who were interested in having a program for their singles ministry. And so it just made a perfect location of bringing a program to the people. And that's how we worked with Oldways and had a Washington Post reporter embedded into that program and just tracked us along with the participants, and it was a great opportunity to just put my spin on it in terms of asking people, do you know your African roots? And how do we reconnect our identity through our food? And how do we begin to raise our Black consciousness, and how that begins changing the relationships, not only with ourselves and our food, but the people around us and how we see our community. So I began to realize food is more than just medicine. It is our identity, it's our culture, it is our power. And it was such a great opportunity to be able to pilot test at A Taste of African Heritage and Health, and be able to really start a movement of more teachers wanting to get in on it and spread it in their communities, and making basic nutrition, cultural nutrition education accessible, when so many times it's not, because even I did not know about nutrition as a kid growing up. I didn't even know it was a field until I got to college. And so how many of us actually get to college to even know of all the different possibilities? So that's why I think it's so important to democratize nutrition, making it accessible to as many people as possible, especially in our communities where we have an access to not only food, but also access to cultural competent healthcare. And so this is where lay health professionals can really make a difference.
Yes, thank you. And also, I see a question in the comments. Someone was asking, where can they find more information about your nonprofit?
Most definitely. So we are right here on Instagram at underscore I am Wanda org, but also on our website, which is iamwanda.org as well.
Yeah.
And I'll try to put that in the chat.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And people can also find that information from the flyer too, where we've, talked about this upcoming chat. So her Instagram pages are linked in there. Yeah, so going off of that, what role does culture and tradition play in the work that you do, and, regarding Wanda and, just all of the projects that you're working on?
Culture is at the heart of what we do. And part of it is understanding that in the making of America, our identity was stripped away in terms of language and tradition and religion and lifestyle, and the way in being how we see ourselves in this world. And so to understand culture and what it means to decolonize our diet and reconnect to who we are, food is a great starting point in opening up that conversation and that ability to do self-reflection. And so for us, culture is not just African culture, but also gender culture, because at a time where we have gone through the women's liberation movement, it was about liberating ourselves out of the kitchen. But being a mom and seeing the important role that kitchens, even though historically they have been sites of trauma, no different than plantation fields, is how do we begin to reclaim those spaces again? And so this is why it's important to reimagine how we not only reimagine, but re-engineer our culture in our communities. And so that's why this conversation is so important, because a lot of times we are assimilating and acculturating, and we actually need to embrace the culture and how that is so critical to our health.
Absolutely. And I think, going off of that, because culture is very important, especially when talking about the nutrition role, because, it's very exclusive to, the majority of the population. It's really hard to get into that field. So it's like, I really, if you could tell us a little more about, how does your organization increase the access of quality nutrition education and empower, women and food leaders of the future?
So we began starting out by connecting to our little Wandas, our girls, because we see our work being intergenerational. So that started with the very books that we read. How does representation show up, not only in terms of just images of Black children, but in relationship to food and health? And so it was very important to start with production of children's books, being able to have that conversation. If we all remember the infamous doll test by the Black couple from Columbia University who were psychologists, Dr. Clarks, who conducted an experiment on racial perception of self-esteem in children, and how the children, when they saw the black and white doll, whether they were in the upstate part of Massachusetts or down to Arkansas, each child responded differently. The child in Arkansas was like, that is an in doll and I'm an in doll, which is heartbreaking. And then the child in Massachusetts saw themselves as running away from the doll. So we have covert, overt racism that is already popping up in our children, and now make that connection to racial perception of how it shows up in food, of children who are not willing to eat their ethnic food in a pre-K classroom. That I've heard these stories already, and children not even 5. And so that's where we began that process of how do we begin to show our cultural food as our medicine to our children, and making it available in African languages as much as English as well. And so we started off with little Wanda going to Nigeria, finding the cure for her Nana who has diabetes. And then we began creating other books that are to be published this year, which is her going to Kenya and to Ethiopia and making those books available in both English and Swahili and Amharic, and testing them out and donating those books when we travel to Africa as well is critically important. So after that, it began, what about the mothers and the aunties and the nanas? And so this is where we began developing out the Wanda Academy, which we launched during the pandemic with the support of Sibley Memorial Hospital and DC Healthcare Finance, to be able to create a hybrid learning platform where we're connecting women in the community, whether you're on Medicaid or Medicare or employer health insurance, making cultural nutrition education with a Black dietitian available, along with grief therapy counselors and those who are ecotherapists, and reconnecting to the land and having them travel to Black women-owned farms and Black women-owned food stores, and letting them know we're more than just consumers. We are producers of the food system, and we are leaders, whether it's in our homes or in our communities. And from there, we began looking at, well, we have a number of 2.7% Black dietitians in this country, which is deplorable. That's less than 4,000. When you think about the fight against diabetes and heart disease, even heart disease, the deaths, I just looked at the numbers in JAMA, outcompete the death rate of COVID. And so we still have the challenge of being able to access cultural competent health professionals. And so for us, we, in our partnerships with corporations like Whole30, who are friends of Wanda, developed the Wanda Endowed Scholarship. And so our goal is to identify universities where we can make an impact and set up endowments that go beyond our lifetime on this planet, but be able to, in perpetuity, support Black women who are pursuing degrees in agriculture and nutrition. So we want to be able to do that at PWIs, predominantly white institutions, as well as HBCUs, and be able to then continue on with our fellowship. We created a Wanda Fellowship, again, creating those public-private partnerships with Good Food Markets this past year, and we want to be able to expand the idea of giving those students who want to become a dietitian or a nutritionist those hands-on experience with mentorship through our Lead Her program, and then also with funding them while getting field experiences so they can then beef up their application when they're applying for the DICAS. So those are just a few examples of how we're trying to make a way out of no way, when really there should be our tax-paying dollars that are creating loan repayment programs. And so that's why we're advocating, why we play a role, whether it's local policy or federal policy, such as just had a long meeting for the last 2 days with the USDA advisory board that I'm on, of like making sure that the conversation of agriculture and nutrition and diversity is front and center of this administration.
Absolutely. And we love having that extra voice there, you know, really sharing that information that we need to have out there. One of the questions that I had, well, I actually had a few, but I know the fellowship program is fairly new for you guys. It was piloted in 2020 or 2021. Um,
2021.
2021, yes. How many fellows have you guys had so far? Or, is it something that you'll soon be accepting applications for? Or, um,
Yeah, the fellowships come about when we have companies that want to partner and extend those opportunities because they're funding the fellows and they're
oh,
creating that experience and we're providing that mentorship they need. And so we've had our first fellow this past summer who had a great experience and we want to continue. And so we are of the belief that once you join and become a part of Wanda's world, you are there in perpetuity if you desire. And so Katie Rosales, who's an Afro-Latina, she was our first fellow coming from Ward 8 in Washington, D.C., where I reside as well. And we wanted to ensure that we give Black women in our hardest hit communities those opportunities and that are coming from our public institutions as well. And so we had stellar applications, but she rose to the top and she knocked it out of the park and landed her first full-time job with the Latin American Youth Center. And we were able to then give her the experience of connecting to top influencers in the nutrition dietetic space at the Food Fluence Summit this year. And, for any student, it's like, imagine if you had a dream to be, Michael Jordan, you got to meet the Michael Jordans of nutrition. Those are the kind of experiences we want to provide to Black women that I did not see, and many can echo the point that we are literally the only ones in our programs at PWIs, and we want to show them that there's a whole world of allies and those who look like you who are willing to make that underground railroad to the promised land of food freedom if you're willing to get on board. And that is what the role of Wanda is, to build pipelines and platforms of opportunities.
beautiful, beautiful. And on a side note, what was your the doll I keep on looking at because it's so cute? How did you come up with the design? Is she inspired by someone in your family, or like how did
Yeah,
you coming up
so
with the design?
little Wanda came about from, really, my daughter at the time was 4. She had had a cavity in preschool, and I honestly didn't understand, like, how did this could happen, because clearly it wasn't for me. And so junk food was a reward in the school system where she was, and I thought, we have Dr. McStuffins. Why can't we have a Dr. Foodie? And so I started to dress her up, and this idea came to my mind of, like, why not make a doll that can inspire her to be a food hero? And so that's how Little Wanda came to be. And I got involved with the toy licensing entertainment industry and began meeting toy execs and understanding the process of securing your IP. And after working with a patent law firm, we're able to secure my first patent of the Little Wanda doll. So can't be copying, or you get the cease and desist.
But when are they on the shelves? Because we all want one.
So that's a whole conversation of the importance of protecting Black inventions and ideas. I can't stress it enough of what it means to understand that when you are in, the space of innovation in food, it goes beyond the food itself. It's also all the other components that involve, such as the representation in the media and entertainment and art space as well. And so we saw that opportunity to make that connection. So the goal and desire is to manufacture the COVID-19 pandemic, as many people saw the barges at dock when it came to importing into the States. So imagine what it did for anyone who was a small business, and the pricing that became exponential when it came to ocean freight. So these are all supply chain logistics that even impact the toy space, and thinking through of, like, okay, what can we do in the meanwhile? And this is where, again, the ability, being an entrepreneur, to pivot and make opportunities when it may look dire at times. And so when you're passionate about what we're doing here in terms of improving Black health and through through nutrition and education, you get very creative about how can you still meet that mark.
Absolutely. And I mean, it really makes all the difference having that representation, especially on little kids. They're so impersonable. So it really is important. I remember when I was younger, it honestly was a struggle trying to find dolls, that had my skin color. So it's like, parents really had to go out of the way to find, representation and toys that, really connected with the child. So that is amazing that you guys are doing things like that. I guess on a more serious note, my question is, nutrition research essentially often lays the groundwork for nutrition programming, yet studies don't always represent those diverse perspectives. So, what are some research gaps that you think should be prioritized to address, health inequalities within the U.S. Black population?
Right. Well, we have a few opportunities with the Farm Bill coming up in the next couple of years. This year alone, the USDA and HHS makes a 5-year research agenda. And part of my desire is that African heritage foods is on that agenda. We know that the Black community is not monolithic. The DMV area alone represents both African, Caribbean, immigrant, Afro-Latino, African Americans, the whole diaspora. And so our foods reflect this diversity in our own communities that are not always accessible and available when we go hunting for foods. And I'm sure we know this from students who have been in the program who are like, where do I find some of this stuff? And so that's access issues. And then what is the nutritional value of those foods? When you think about fonio and millet and all these other dishes, and again, it's about access to user-friendly nutrition analysis, nutrition data analysis information that is not readily available. When Super Tracker was one of the casualties under the past administration, that was a USDA online app platform that dietitians and just nutrition educators would go to and plug and play and pull nutrition information. And so being able to have the government play a role not only in access of education, but also access to the nutrition information that we currently have to rebuild. We literally need to rebuild what it means to access to cultural food information. And the Food is Medicine platform is one pathway. There's been a big push around prescription produce, meaning doctors give prescription fruits and vegetables to patients who have diabetes, heart disease, and other diet-related diseases. And so when we think about Black, Latino, and Asian populations and indigenous, what does that look like when it comes to make a prescription of their cultural foods? Well, if doctors are not aware of the range of food diversity, that becomes an issue. And if they're not connecting to dietitians to make that transfer of patients, or there's not enough access to even dietitians of color, this becomes a problem. So that's why the government must honestly just rebuild the whole pipeline when it comes to not only equity in the actual profession, but equity in the research, and then equity in the consumer information, and also when it comes to the promotion in the media and how food writers cover these issues. So everyone must be educated in the process, and that also means the textbooks that we use. We typically have food and culture as a course that is not mandated in every nutrition program, and that's kind of deplorable when you think about the new majority will be the minority. And so that means anyone who say that they are working in underrepresented communities, this is a mandate. You must understand food and culture.
Absolutely. And that's something that we echo a lot within our curriculum too. Like, it's all about connecting with your audience. And, as a nutritionist, it's really important to connect with your target population. So, if you're going into a predominantly Black area or even Latino area, you can't just say, try these Mediterranean heritage-based meals, because that is something that they did not grow up eating, or, that is not a part of their heritage. So it's almost like experimenting around in the kitchen, and it's not sustainable. As soon as you get it wrong, or you feel like something's not right, you don't keep up with it. And it's like, this information is supposed to be for our health, because food is
Mhm.
medicine. So it's really important that, we are creating these nutrition programs focused around heritage and, based on, common foodways of the diaspora, and also, just different heritage. So you're focusing with your targeted population. So
Mhm.
couldn't agree with that even more. And that's, obviously why we have you as an advisory board member, because you also echo that same message, which is fantastic. Um, Going a little bit in another direction, I wanted to ask a little bit about your Sisterhood Supper Sundays of 2022. I know there's something newer
Yes.
that you guys are doing. So yeah, if you could tell us a little bit about that, if there's any DC sisters in the area.
Most definitely. So the Sisterhood Supper Challenge began with this idea of how many of us have, especially here in the DMV, go to Sunday brunches. It really is like a religion. And it was kind of challenged during the pandemic, but people tried anyway. And it's a chance when, people, come together, women, they eat, they gossip, and they pay the restaurant, and they flip tables in 90 minutes. Well, my thing is about how do we change our culture? And so many of us, we know the iconic movie Soul Food. And so I thought, how do we reclaim our kitchen tables and become sites of conversations of self-care? And really, how we thought about Dr. King and how he would have these Black women down south making meals and everything and feeding as they are strategizing around the movement of civil rights. And so I said, we need to rethink at a time when a lot of us still feel locked down and shut in our homes, of how do we connect to the people that we are comfortable and close with. And so the Sisterhood Supper really stemmed from, a combination of knowing that historical backdrop, while also looking at the pandemic providing an opportunity for us to rethink how do we want to move differently coming out of this, uh, you know, historical moment. And so for me, that's where the Sisterhood Supper came from. Last year during Juneteenth, we launched the Sisterhood Supper to make it visually available to the community. And this was the first time since lockdown that we came together, and it was right here in Ward 8, where we wanted to have Black women, one, to connect and build community and be able to see that we are here to be of service and also self-care. And from there, it was, now let's launch this challenge where we want to invite you to be a host and have other women come together and cook, make a menu not only of healthy cultural foods, but also a menu of resistance and resiliency. And so we want them to collect their recipes and be able to share in the Sisterhood Community Cookbook that were formed. And that idea came about from thinking of Black women clubs during the Spanish flu. I thought about how many of those stories were being documented and how our voices of Black women during this time, how they use food to survive, being documented. We saw, chefs who were seen as these superheroes in the middle of the pandemic. But I was like, what about everyday women, our mothers, our aunties, our nanas? I mean, they are standing in the gap, being the lunch ladies in the home while the children are learning online. And so I really wanted to be able to honor those women and say, like, let's come together and create a new tradition by launching this challenge. And so with the support of Giant, and then also Diversity City Fund helped to kick off this pilot here in DC, that our orientation will start next Wednesday at 7 p.m. on Zoom, but it's for women to become a host and be able to plan a meal, invite their friends, collect their stories, their recipes, and then we just spoke with one of our partners at the well to be able to host the Juneteenth event again live, God willing. And so we want to be able to see that we can cook for change in our communities.
That is so exciting. That sounds so much fun. And I love the emphasis on self-care, coming together, women empowerment, sharing recipes, talking about food, talking about health, leadership. So that is something amazing you've got going on and super exciting to get started. And yeah, we'll definitely be in tune for the cookbook too when that's ready.
Yeah, so people can learn more about the Sisterhood Supper on our website. It's iamwanda.org/Sisterhood Supper. And so the registration is live now. So the goal is we have it available here in the DC area. However, it's an opportunity that we know can be expanded in other communities. And so we do look for that time once we tweak and see how this first pilot goes. We want to be able to invite others because before we even did the Juneteenth event, I would literally hop from different cities hosting a Sisterhood Supper in homes and again encouraging people to share recipes. And so this idea has been in the making for a few years now, and so now it's opening it up to the wider community.
Absolutely, yes. And I love the idea of recipe sharing because I know it can get a little hard out here trying to get recipes from your grandma. But I feel like it's really starting to become more widely acceptable to share recipes, you know, especially within the community. There's so many Facebook groups out there. You've got Sisterhood Supper challenges out there, like where you can just, you know, kind of join this community of women or, you know, whoever you feel connected with and be able to kind of foster a relationship where it's like, oh, you cooked, you know, that red snapper. I cooked the oxtail. Someone cooked the collard greens. What did you put in your collard greens? They don't taste like mine, but they taste real good, you know? So I love that. I love that we're starting to get more like that because it's like, you know, of course we have, you know, maybe those pocket recipes, but then, you know, we got to be willing to share and, you know, really foster upon this and, you know,
Yeah.
really showcase Black excellence, you know, because we are the food you know, we are a part of those food creators out there. And I think the more we, you know, get empowered and excited about our foodways and our cuisine, it really, you know, is good for the community in general. You know, it really fosters that sense of pride in, you know, African diaspora foodways. So it is really important. But love that. That sounds so much fun.
Yeah, and we're linking in Black food on businesses outside the mainstream big box grocers to be able to give the women an opportunity to learn of other food businesses and products that are out there. So that's why, you know, we'll be doing grocery tours at Giant with the women, as well as giving them free produce and groceries to help start the challenge because we know we have food insecurity and it's been challenging for a lot of people. And so though the program is free, we want to also incentivize them by giving them the products to make this happen, and then provide a Sisterhood Supper at a local Black-owned restaurant for those who were the top winners in the program as well, who were able to, you know, host as many women as possible and collect recipes. So we want to honor those who are the real food heroes.
Absolutely. And what an exciting time too. I think around Juneteenth, you know, the warmer weather, all the community gardens and farms, so you can really pick up local produce too. And, you know, so many options out there to source your ingredients. So that's amazing. On a note, I would love to know, you know, what does the term African heritage foods mean to you? I mean, everyone has their own definition of it, but how do you take it in and, you know, how do you define it?
So I would say, even though I've done the DNA test with African ancestry and know my, you know, Fulani heritage in Hausaland in Niger, Nigeria, I see that as my
Wow.
African heritage, and I've traveled back when we started Wanda and launched and registered there in 2016. But I still have a Pan-African mindset in recognizing that the diaspora, one, is part of the African Union, and therefore in recognizing that we are many in one. The food, I can't help but to appreciate the diversity of not only just indigenous ingredients from the continent, but also the flavor profiles. I mean, I do have an affinity to West African cuisine, but I do love East African just as much. And I love, the Mediterranean of Africa. I just was in Morocco this past year, and it was just heaven to eat as many different kinds of tangines as possible. And so it's that diversity, it's like, it's like trying to choose your favorite child. I love them all.
Yeah, absolutely. No, yes. And I love that you're in Morocco recently. I think last time we talked about that a little bit because we both gone to visit. So how fun. I can't wait to get back to traveling again.
Yes, Egypt, was delayed but not denied from having COVID over Christmas break, but that is definitely the next trip. Kenya, Tanzania, Zanzibar is definitely next on my list coming out of this pandemic.
Yes, absolutely. I want to go over so bad. So, super exciting. I was getting lost in the questions now. I'll make that one the last one, but can you share with us a cooking or nutrition tip for the audience and, maybe something that they can incorporate in their day-to-day life?
I always love saying, don't have your fruit fried dot laid to the side unless you love to be laid to the side too. And for those down south, we know this. We love frying vegetables, fried corn, fried okra, fried everything. So I would say the quick nutrition tip is in the preparation, just like the transfiguration of Jesus. Yes, I come from Bible Belt, USA. So food and faith go hand in hand. So when it comes to just one nutrition tip is, I love cooking in my cast iron skillet, and whether it's a light saute, I cook out of that thing. That is my go-to skillet for everything. One, because the iron, that you get from it, and you have so many issues with the Teflon products with being carcinogenic. And so, yes, we want good produce, but also how you prepare that produce is equally as important. And so I had a recent acupuncture session this week, and, I was telling them, I was getting back into eating my kale salads, and I still think it's good for my constitution to do so, but they were reminded me, it's good to also eat, warm foods as well. And I was like, yeah, a good kale sweet potato stew needs to come in my life right about now. And so you can prepare that with, coconut milk, the kale, chopped up sweet potatoes, onion, garlic, marinate that with curry spices. And that's a nice little, vegan friendly dish that you can then also add in black eyed peas and rice if you want to add that complementary protein in as well.
Oh my gosh, that sounds delicious. And I haven't had dinner yet.
Me neither. I'm cooking right after this.
Oh, same.
What's in your skillet? What's in your wallet?
Oh yeah, I love my cast iron skillet. Seriously, I cannot praise it enough. I'm like, even when someone's touching it, I'm just like, I don't know. Are you going to clean it properly?
Well, I already know I don't do a good job, so I'm not even going to hold myself to that level of criticism. Like I've already know. I don't put soap in it, but I don't do the whole, let's bake it in the oven at 400. No. If I'm baking cornbread in it, I'll do it. That's about it.
Yeah, I'll pre-season it every once in a while, but it's not too hard to do. I mean, honestly, once I finish the meal, I'll hurry up and clean it up, rinse it off, and then I'll stick it right in the oven while it's cooling down, just so it can still get that. But yeah, I'm a little bit of a cast iron, skillet snob, so I have a little Dutch oven, and it's a serious addiction, I must say. It makes everything taste amazing. I don't know what it does. It's like if I cook some okra on the cast iron and then, beside the regular skillet, it's a huge difference. huge.
Yeah, it's like if a skillet was black girl magic, it would be an iron skillet.
Literally, I don't get it. I'm like, ancestors knew exactly what they were doing. Knew exactly what they were doing. So love that. Well, actually, we're getting towards the end, and I love talking with you. But one thing I'd love to, ask about is, how can the public continue to support the work that your nonprofit does? I saw something about the Food Freedom Fund, but how can we continue to support, because it is Black History Month, and uh, companies and people are looking to support, Black-owned nonprofits and businesses. So how can we add you to that?
Well, first, since we do have some men dietitians in the building, I want to give a shout out since I know their numbers are not represented as well in the field. So we do have hashtag I Love Wanda. So that is for men who are opening up doors of opportunity for women when they have a seat at the table. And so, yes, we have a Food Freedom Fund that people can support. And those funds help with creating our next endowed scholarship. And we want to give people an opportunity to be engaged in any and every way possible. That's why we have a Get Involved section on our page that people can check out. And also follow us, get our numbers up. We have now, approaching our 6th year. So we would love to have 5,000 people to follow us on our social media. So if you can help, even just share us with a friend, tell them to follow, repost some of our Black History Month facts that we have on our page. We're highlighting Black men for Black History Month, ironically, but we recognize, again, men have made opportunities open for women, and then when Women's History Month happens, we'll be highlighting Black women as well, who have been pioneering in the food, ag, and nutrition space. So that's where I would say slide them culinary coins to Wanda, as well as being able to share and give a good word for us. We need those who are as the politicians say, we got surrogates all over the place. We need surrogates and warriors for Wanda everywhere.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. This has been fantastic. We love reconnecting with one of our African Heritage and Health Advisory Board members. So, let's definitely stay in contact. Super excited. Thank you, everyone, for joining the conversation today. I did see some questions. Oh, actually, I just saw one, and it was about the food pyramid. Yes, we have a food pyramid because we see it as more inclusive. It has the different tiers, and that's how we made our A Taste of African Heritage curriculum off of. But you could find more information about that on the Oldways website. But, just wanted to focus a lot more on, this conversation with Tambra Raye Stevenson. Thank you so much. And everyone, have a good rest of your night, and happy Black History Month.
Take care.
Great. Bye.
Bye.